In the ancient city of Thebes, King Laius found himself standing on the threshold of the oracle's temple, burdened with an uneasy heart. The air was thick with omens, whispered through the stone walls by priests and seers. Inside the dimly lit chamber, the reverberating words of the oracle disclosed a dark prophecy, etching themselves into his mind. His newborn son, the oracle warned, was fated to become the agent of his demise. This son, pure and innocent now, was destined to kill him, unraveling the very lineage he cherished. The news struck Laius with a wave of fear, its icy fingers gripping his soul and refusing to let go. Desperate and trembling, King Laius confided this dread revelation to his queen, Jocasta. In the private confines of their chamber, away from the prying eyes of their court, they deliberated over the shadow cast upon their lives. Jocasta, with a kind heart burdened by a mother's love and a queen's duty, felt the weight of foreboding as deeply as her husband. They grappled with disbelief, but understood that to defy fate was only to court disaster. Thus, in whispered counsel filled with sorrow, they resolved to distance themselves from the curse of destiny. Determined yet mournful, Laius and Jocasta made the harrowing decision to relinquish their son. They concluded that only by removing him from their lives could they stem the tide of prophecy. Thus, entrusting their child to a trusted servant, they decreed that the infant be taken to Mount Cithaeron, a desolate place far removed from royal gaze. Wrapped in simple cloth, the infant Oedipus was to be left there, where the embrace of nature, harsh and unforgiving, would seal his fate far from the warmth of parental arms. Dawn broke with a solemn serenity as the servant, under the veil of shadows, journeyed to the misty slopes of Cithaeron. The air was thick with morning mist, shrouding the mountain in a veil of silver and pale blue. There, amidst the rocky terrain, the infant Oedipus was laid upon the earth, an innocent soul cradled by fate. He was but a silent form against the rolling mist, drawing breath in a world that seemed ready to turn its back upon him. Yet, fate, with its intricate designs, intervened in the guise of a compassionate shepherd. Tending his flock amidst the quiet solitude of the mountainside, this simple man stumbled upon the abandoned child. Sensing the weight of the heavens upon the little one, the shepherd was stirred by an unhesitating impulse of mercy. Gathering the infant gently, he resolved not to let this life slip away into the annals of forgotten tragedy. The shepherd, recognizing the gravity of his discovery, brought the child to a messenger who traveled often to Corinth, a city where fortunes could be reversed. Entrusting the infant to him, he whispered tales of the foundling's origin, bidding the messenger to find the child refuge. Thus, the conveyance of Oedipus from Thebes to Corinth began, a journey that would alter the course of history. In Corinth, King Polybus and Queen Merope reigned without heirs to share the joys and burdens of their crown. The arrival of the findling seemed a gift from the gods. Upon hearing the messenger's tale, they received the child warmly into their fold, adopting him as their own son. In the halls of Corinth, where light danced in golden hues upon marble floors, Oedipus was no longer a nameless foundling but a prince, unknowing of his royal Theban blood. As this new chapter of Oedipus's life commenced, he was welcomed into the embrace of a family, unaware of the tempest that lay dormant within his destiny. The prophecies that had cast him adrift remained hidden beneath the gentler tides of his childhood. Yet even amidst serenity, the threads of fate, though briefly obscured, lay ready to surface when fate so chose. Thus, the tapestry of Oedipus's life began its intricate weaving. Resilient and soft as the sun's first rays, Oedipus would know the warmth of love and kinship, even as the shadows of prophecy lay beyond the horizon, waiting patiently to reveal their truths. An unseen revelation awaited him, ready to guide his steps towards future unknowns, hidden yet imminent. In the warm climes of Corinth, Under the nurturing care of King Polybus and Queen Merope, Oedipus grew strong and intelligent. This city, basking beneath the sun's golden gaze, became his home. As the years passed, he transformed from a curious child into a resilient young man, displaying both wisdom and strength that his adoptive parents cherished. Yet, in the background of this idyllic upbringing, whispers began to arise, punctuated by the ever-present murmur of a bigger destiny awaiting him beyond Corinth's walls. Rumors about Oedipus's parentage simmered under the surface, sometimes bubbling up amid stories shared by the elders of the city. Despite the affection showered upon him by Polybus and Merope, these rumors cast a shadow on the origins of their beloved son. Oedipus, ever observant and inquisitive, could not ignore the fragments of conversation that reached his ears. Questions regarding his true heritage began to whisper to him in the quiet moments when the world grew still and the night sky unfurled its blanket of stars. Determined to uncover the truth, Oedipus approached King Polybus and Queen Merope, seeking clarity from those he had known as mother and father. In the royal palace, pillars echoing their long history, he found himself ensnared in a delicate balance between loyalty and an unyielding yearning for truth. As he asked about his origins, his parents exchanged glances, their evasive answers only serving to deepen his doubts. The silence that followed his inquiries became louder than any response they could have given, and in this silence, Oedipus sensed the weight of an unspoken truth. The uncertainty gnawed at him, refusing to let go, and Oedipus felt adrift, yearning for answers that eluded him. Seeking guidance, he resolved to visit the oracle at Delphi. This was a place that many believed held the wisdom of the gods, a crossroads between mortal concerns and divine insight. The journey to Delphi was undertaken with an earnest heart, each step echoing his resolve, his mind a tapestry woven with questions awaiting answers. At Delphi, the oracle's prophecy fell upon him with the weight of inevitability, echoing the terrifying presage once woven for King Laius. Oedipus was informed that he was destined to commit unthinkable acts. The very doom awaiting him was foretold. The future held the horror that he would kill his father and marry his mother. But to the young man, these words seemed to portend a fate far removed from his reality. Believing Polybus and Merope to be his birth parents, the prophecy struck fear deep into his heart, a fear that reverberated with every truth he thought he knew unraveling before him. A decision took form amidst the turmoil within his soul. Oedipus vowed that he would never return to Corinth so as to protect those he loved from the dark future the gods had spoken of. The weight of potential fate sat heavily on his shoulders, but with determination, Oedipus set off on a new journey. His path lay beyond the ornate gates of Corinth, leading him into lands unknown and history yet unwritten. As he embarked upon this quest for identity, the young man was driven by the desire to escape the chains of prophecy threatening to snare him. The moon overhead provided company, a constant sentinel in the endless sky. His footsteps carried him farther from the life he knew, past the city gates that stood as sentinels to his past. The open road stretched before him, promising both peril and discovery, whispering of destinies unfulfilled and truths lingering just beyond the horizon. In looking towards this unknown future, Oedipus unknowingly stepped closer to the roots of his past, toward the fates that awaited to play their hands. The journey was the beginning of a path that would lead him through love, despair, and ultimately to the truths buried deep within the annals of his own identity. Under the overcast sky of early autumn, Oedipus left the familiarity of Corinth behind, guided by a mixture of hope and trepidation. The road stretched onward, its dusty path winding through the gentle rise and fall of the ancient landscape. With each step, Oedipus clung to the hope that somewhere along his journey, he would uncover the true essence of his identity and find solitude from the haunting prophecy that dogged him. Beneath him, the earth felt firm and resolute, a comforting contrast to the uncertainty that churned within. Despite the weight of the unknown, there was a peculiar solace in the rhythmic plod of his sandals meeting the ground. As he traveled, the landscape shifted subtly, a testament to the ever-changing nature of the journey itself. The air was thick with potential, charged with the inevitability that life, like the road, seldom took the expected path. The journey led him to a place that the fates had woven into the tapestry of his destiny, a crossroads, a silent symbol of choice and consequence. This intersection, peaceful yet profound, lay waiting under the drizzly autumn dusk, shrouded in a palette of deep blues and stormy grays. It was the kind of place where the veins of countless paths entwined, each leading to a different fate. As the dim light of the day waned, a chariot emerged from the haze, its approach heralding an encounter of monumental consequence. The chariot, drawn by strong and restless horses, carried a distinguished man flanked by his attendants. This figure, firmly seated in his position as if poised by the hands of time itself, was none other than King Laius of Thebes, though Oedipus had no way of knowing. The two men, one traveling for destiny and the other for duty, converged at this fateful juncture, as if drawn together by unseen threads. Their paths intersected with unforeseen inevitability. What began as a simple argument over the right-of-way on the narrow path swiftly escalated, unraveling under the weight of unspoken tensions. Words, harsh and hurried, were exchanged as the narrowness of the road demanded a resolution. Both men, strong-willed and impervious to yielding, refused to back down. The air crackled with an almost tangible intensity, a prelude to conflict. In the heat of that contentious encounter, tempers flared dangerously. Where there might have been deliberation, there was only haste. Where there might have been peace, there was only conflict. Oedipus, driven by a mixture of youthful arrogance and the intensity of the moment, found himself swept into the fray. Unbeknownst to him, the man he faced was not simply an obstructor of passage, but rather the father he never knew, King Laius, whose life was unknowingly interwoven with his own. In a shameless testament to the binding strands of fate, Oedipus's actions were soon shadowed by a tragic outcome. In an eruption of fierce defiance and unbridled wrath, Oedipus struck down the king and his entourage. The altercation, a seemingly isolated act of violence, held within it the echoes of ancient prophecies, each word spoken long ago, now manifesting in cruel actuality. As the dust of the encounter settled, and the chariot lay forgotten amid the silence of the weary road, Oedipus stood at the crossroads of fate itself, oblivious to the profound gravity of what had transpired. Yet, unlike the crossroads that encouraged contemplation, this moment, charged with destiny's decree, unfurled with silent certainty. This act, unbeknownst to him, echoed the oracle's prophecy whispered in Delphi's sacred halls. The prophecy, which spoke of patricide, had stealthily aligned itself with reality at this very juncture. Unaware of the implications held by his actions, Oedipus resumed his journey, the distant outlines of Thebes forming his new horizon. His footsteps guided by purpose, Oedipus carried the invisible weight of an unseen fate as he continued toward the city. It was a burden not yet realized, cloaked in the enigma of prophecies that shrouded his life like the mists that wove through the autumn air. Thus, the path stretched on, leading him onward, each step forward entwining him further with the destiny that awaited. Oedipus moved toward Thebes where, unknowingly, the threads of life, prophecy, and tragic fulfillment awaited their climactic convergence. Beneath the sheltering canopy of a night veiled in softness, the stage was quietly set for the next chapter in his unfolding story. As Oedipus made his way toward Thebes, the looming city walls stretched under a canvas of foreboding skies, veiling the day in a cloak of brooding shadows. His journey had been arduous, burdened with the unfulfilled prophecy that unknowingly lurked behind him. The whispers of destiny seemed to echo in the rustling of the leaves and the distant sounds that carried on the wind. Yet, unyielding in his resolve, Oedipus pressed forward, the promise of new beginnings drawing him nearer to the city's heart. Upon reaching the gates of Thebes, Oedipus encountered an air thick with dread. The terror of the Sphinx had cast a long shadow over the once lively city. This mythical creature, lion-bodied with the wings and visage of a woman, perched atop a rocky ledge just outside the city walls. The Sphinx had long tormented Thebes, posing deadly riddles to those who dared approach. Failure to answer correctly would spell doom for the unfortunate and add to the city's sorrow. Curiosity mingled with fear as Theban citizens peeked from behind closed doors and gathered cautiously, drawn to the bold stranger at their gates. Oedipus, undaunted by the creature's fearsome reputation, approached with a determined step. But his heart was set on confronting the Sphinx, for what lay behind those walls was another chapter of his life waiting to be unfurled. Standing before the grim visage of the Sphinx, Oedipus was met with a riddle to untangle, a task that had led many before him to their demise. "What walks on 4 feet in the morning, 2 feet at noon, and 3 feet in the evening?" she inquired, her speech unfurling like a web intended to ensnare his mind. A silence stretched, pregnant with anticipation, as onlookers held their breath, their fate interwoven with his. Pondering the riddle, Oedipus's thoughts delved into the quiet wisdom of his experiences and the teachings imparted to him in Corinth. Slowly, the metaphor unraveled in his mind, revealing itself not as an abstract challenge but as a simple truth of human life. "Man," he declared with a steady voice, "for he crawls on all fours as a child, walks on 2 legs in his prime, and supports himself with a cane in his old age." The Sphinx, thus outsmarted, let out a cry, a sound of acknowledgement, and with it, the city's burden lifted. She leapt from her lofty perch, her defeat both her undoing and an inadvertent liberation for Thebes. Her shadow dissipated like the morning mist, leaving behind a city bathed in the soft glow of a setting sun, free at last from her thrall. With the Sphinx vanquished, Thebes erupted into a chorus of euphoria. The people, once cowed by their inability to solve the creature's riddles, now beheld a new champion in Oedipus. They hailed him as a savior, their voices a grateful melody rising into the evening sky. For the city, Oedipus was not just a hero but a beacon of hope, a symbol of deliverance when their own resolve had waned. The newfound peace swept through the streets, infusing life into the city as long-extinguished fires were rekindled. The gates swung open, welcoming Oedipus with open arms. Thebes, grateful for its rescue, would soon learn more of this man whose grasp of wisdom and courage had saved them from despair. As dusk settled, bringing a quietude to Thebes once more, Oedipus found himself on the precipice of change. His triumph, though sweet, was touched with the subtle brush of destiny, reminding him of the ever-present prophecy. Yet, there was solace in the triumph, a moment of reprieve from the journey behind him. In the gathering twilight, as Thebes prepared to embrace its hero, the fabric of Oedipus's life began weaving again. The whispers of his past were muted, softened by the newfound tranquility. But even in victory, the undercurrents of fate rippled unseen beneath the surface, ready to stir at the appointed time. Now hailed as a savior, Oedipus stepped into the realm of possibilities, where new responsibilities awaited. The city that lay before him was a tapestry of stories, each thread woven with hopes and dreams he would soon come to know. And as the land welcomed the dawn of new leadership, Oedipus, too, prepared to navigate the chapters of his life yet unwritten. The people of Thebes, in their celebration, became unaware of the intricacies of destiny still unfolding. For Oedipus, his journey was far from over. Tomorrow would bring its own riddles, a different set of challenges to ponder and overcome as the light of his journey continued to unravel in the shadow of his own prophecy. As the triumphant cries of the Theban people echoed through the ancient city, Oedipus found himself at the heart of a grand celebration. The once besieged gates of Thebes now welcomed a sea of joyful faces, all eager to acclaim their new hero. The air was alive with chants and praises, a vivid testament to the relief brought by the fall of the Sphinx. Thebes, a city long under the shadow of dread, now basked in a bright, newfound freedom. A freedom paid for by the wisdom and courage of Oedipus. In recognition of his valiant deed, the city's leaders convened, their decision clear and unanimous. Oedipus would be crowned their new king. As they led him to the royal dais, the twilight skies turned shades of lavender and dusky rose, the soft rain dusting the scene with a gentle silver hue. It was in this serene yet exhilarating atmosphere that Oedipus accepted the crown, amidst the lavenders and pinks of a Theban winter evening. The soft rain seemed to bless the occasion, lightly touching upon the crowns and banners that adorned the scene. No sooner had the coronation ended than the city erupted into festivities. Parades wound through the streets. Colorful banners floated like streams across the sky. Tables groaned under the weight of hearty feasts, while music filled the air with an ebullience that spoke of hope and renewal. Oedipus, the newly crowned king, walked amongst the people, greeted by cheers and reverence. His presence alone was a symbol of peace for Thebes, and his heart swelled with the city's ready embrace. Yet amid this celebration, fate wove its complex threads with quiet, invisible hands. Jocasta, the widowed queen, extended to Oedipus not only gratitude but also her hand in marriage. In this act, Thebes sought not merely a king, but a union that would heal its wounds. Oedipus, unaware of the deeper ties binding him to Jocasta, accepted her offer. The marriage was met with jubilation, echoing through the palace halls as a symbol of unity for the kingdom. Under Oedipus's rule, Thebes thrived as much from his wisdom as from the prosperity following their release from the Sphinx. The king's presence was a balm to the people, his intelligence and fairness drawing them to him. He governed with a keen understanding, steering Thebes into an era of peace and growth. The city, under his care, seemed to pulse with a new life, inspired by the very man who had once faced the deadly riddle at their gates. Still, for all his successes, a quiet restlessness gnawed at Oedipus's soul. Beneath his calm exterior lay the ghost of prophecy, haunting him with vague whisperings of fate. The story of his life, a tapestry woven with riddles of its own, left him pondering questions of identity and destiny. He could not shake the feeling that the joyous celebrations hid deeper currents of something unseen, an undercurrent that reached through the layers of time, hinting at something other than fortune. Even with prosperity surrounding him, Oedipus could not ignore the faint, unsettling shadow cast over his heart. Memories of the oracle's words shuffled through his mind like restless specters. These prophecies, intangible yet persistently vague, seemed to pursue him with an inevitability he could not escape, threading his triumph with an inescapable sense of foreboding. Thus, as the people of Thebes cheered their king and the city hummed with the lively pulse of newfound hope, the seeds of future tragedy quietly took root, dormant, yet inevitably, they awaited their time to emerge. And amidst the fleeting glory of the moment, Oedipus stood seemingly poised on the precipice of destiny, his path both set and unseen. Thebes, a city once vibrant under the wise reign of King Oedipus, now found itself grimly ensnared in a grip of darkness. A chilling air descended upon the city as an invisible plague began to seep into the lives of its citizens. Farmers looked despondently upon barren fields as crops withered under an unkind sky, while sickness crept through the city, touching both young and old. The once filled markets, teeming with life and laughter, grew silent. An air of somber desperation enveloped the slumbering streets, and a cloud seemed to have settled over Thebes, matching the drizzly winter skies that loomed above. In this climate of despair, Oedipus, their savior king, was seen pacing the palace chambers, a furrow of determination etched upon his brow. His recent victory over the cunning Sphinx and the subsequent prosperity Thebes had enjoyed now seemed a distant memory. Driven by a sense of duty to his people, Oedipus pledged to discover the cause of the plague and to bring an end to the city's suffering. It was a promise bound by the sincerity of a ruler deeply intertwined with the fate of his city. Creon, Jocasta's loyal brother and a trusted advisor to Oedipus, was dispatched to the oracle at Delphi. His task was to seek guidance, hoping that the wisdom of the gods would unravel the mystery of the plague. The journey to Delphi was arduous, yet Creon journeyed with the urgency befitting the weight of his mission. Meanwhile, Thebes held its breath in anticipation, eyes turned towards the horizon for news that might serve as a beacon of hope. Upon his return, Creon gathered the people of Thebes, his demeanor shadowed by the heavy knowledge he bore. As he stood before the assembly, his words cut through the anxious air, revealing that the plague was not a mere malady of nature, but a divine punishment. The oracle had proclaimed that the city was tainted by an unresolved crime. The murder of King Laius, the former ruler of Thebes, remained unpunished. The gods demanded atonement through the expulsion or death of the murderer to lift the curse from the city. Oedipus, resolute and unyielding even in the face of such grim news, declared his intent to rid Thebes of this blight by finding the murderer. He stood before the citizens, urging anyone with knowledge of the crime to come forward. His voice carried a mixture of authority and pleading, for he understood that this revelation was not only the key to lifting the plague, but perhaps a chance to further unravel the threads of his own turbulent fate. Unbeknownst to him, the very answers he sought were veiled closely within his own journey. Day by day, Oedipus intensified his inquiries, invoking both fear and respect, as he sought justice for Thebes. In the hushed corners of the palace, Jocasta watched her husband with an increasing sense of unease, for shadows of old prophecies lingered in her mind. Yet, outwardly, Thebes echoed Oedipus's determination, the hope that justice would bring an end to their turmoil, growing stronger with each passing day. As the city grappled with the burden of truth yet to be uncovered, whispers spread through its haunted streets. The people of Thebes exchanged nervous glances, aware that in the heart of their flourishing kingdom lay secrets powerful enough to reshape their very foundations. Though the air was still clouded, there was a sense that the skies might eventually clear, that the clarity Oedipus promised could soon be within reach. In the depths of his mind, Oedipus reassured himself that finding the murderer would bring an end to their suffering and, perhaps, reveal to him more about his own obscure past. His determination, noble and resolute, set the stage for the unraveling of deep-rooted truths. A sincere resolve now mirrored the quiet intensity with which he governed his life, unwavering in the pursuit of redemption for Thebes. Yet fate, ever the silent weaver, watched as Thebes stood on the brink of revelation. Though Oedipus remained unaware, the threads were inexorably pulling towards a reckoning, a crossroads of identity, truth, and consequence. The city waited, suspended in a state of hopeful anticipation and fear. The oracles had spoken. It was now only a matter of time until their words fully manifested. Oedipus stood at the helm of his city, unaware of just how closely tied he was to the events that were about to unfold. Little did he realize the guilty party he sought, one who needed uncovering for the salvation of all, was much closer than he could ever have imagined. The city of Thebes lay heavy under the dark mantle of its curse. Oedipus, their determined king, made a solemn promise before the gathered citizens, pledging to lift the shadow that darkened their lives. He vowed to discover the truth behind the murder of the former King Laius, whose unresolved fate was believed to be the root of the god's displeasure. With a sense of urgency and responsibility that only increased with each passing day, Oedipus declared an open call for anyone with knowledge of the tragedy to step forward, ensuring them protection. So no voice remained unheard. The news spread swiftly through the city, its whispers carried on the somber air. Many watched silently, hope mingling with fear, as Oedipus ordered Creon to summon Tiresias, the blind prophet, to court. Tiresias, revered for his wisdom and insight, was regarded by many as a bridge between the mortals of Thebes and the hidden will of the gods. As he entered the dimly lit hall, the sound of his oracle staff tapping on the stone floor echoed through the gathering. Shadows flitted across the walls, painted by the flickering light of torches held high. In the quiet tension of the palace, Oedipus awaited an answer to the riddle that consumed his city. Tiresias, feeling the weight of what was to come, hesitated, knowing all too well the sting of such truths. Oedipus, driven by duty and desperation, implored the prophet to share his insights. Tiresias, after a considerable pause filled only with the whispered breaths of the assembly, finally spoke. His words were as cryptic as they were revealing, hinting at layers of tragedy buried in the king's past. Frustration simmered within Oedipus as the prophet spoke in guarded tones, choosing each word with the precision of one who knew the weight of revelation. Tiresias warned of truths better left undiscovered, hinting at a connection between Oedipus's life and the curse that plagued Thebes. Unwilling to accept ambiguity, Oedipus pressed with an urgency reflecting both his commitment to justice and an unspoken fear of what lay beneath his inquiry. In a moment of charged tension, he accused Tiresias of conspiracy, suspecting manipulation amidst political turmoil. The prophet, feeling the pressure of duty over personal discomfort, reluctantly turned the conversation toward Oedipus himself. His revelation was veiled but unmistakable in its implication. Tiresias suggested a connection more profound and sinister than the king could have imagined, that Oedipus himself, the very man devoted to lifting the blight from Thebes, might be intricately woven into the fabric of the city's suffering. The murmurs around the court swelled with doubt and unease as the weight of this claim settled upon those present. Beset by these theories, Oedipus lashed out in a blend of denial and defiance that only someone profoundly threatened might exhibit. Anger masked the insecurity gnawing at the edges of his confidence. He questioned the loyalty and motives not just of Tiresias, but of those around him who seemed swayed by such unfounded allegations. Yet, beneath this public bravado, a quieter storm of reflection raged, disturbed by the discord between his unyielding commitment to finding the truth and the possibility that truth might undo him. As tensions simmered, the atmosphere in the court shifted from disbelief to an uncertain determination. Oedipus resolved to delve deeper, driven by a mixture of skepticism toward the prophet's words and a burgeoning need to confirm his innocence, if nothing else. This resolve marked the beginning of a path that, unbeknownst to him, would lead closer to the unraveling of his own tragic narrative, a narrative unknown to Thebes in its entirety, but destined to redefine their view of fate and consequence. With each step forward, the quest for truth promised not only to lift the plague but to peel back the layers of time itself, revealing the motives and machinations that lurked beneath the surface. Oedipus, whether aware or not, stood at the cusp of a revelation that would transform him from an agent of justice into a participant in his own tale of woe. The palace, once a place of assured order, now bristled with undercurrents of intrigue and veiled intentions. In the quiet aftermath of this encounter, the shadows that Tiresias left deepened further, casting long, winding trails of suspicion that crisscrossed the paths of those present. The truth remained elusive, yet Oedipus's dedication to its discovery forged the promise of inevitable confrontation with the past. This undercurrent of unsolved mysteries continued its pull, leading inexorably toward further revelations, a reality that Oedipus, with steadfast resolve, could neither deny nor delay. In the dimly lit chamber of the palace, shadows flickered like silent phantoms, mirroring the hushed tension that filled the air. Oedipus, desperate to unveil the truth behind King Laius's murder, knew the next step was to gather witnesses from the past, those who might hold fragments of the elusive puzzle. It was an uneasy atmosphere. A mixture of intrigue and foreboding lingered as he awaited the arrival of one who might shed light on the mysterious assassination. The surviving servant of King Laius was ushered into the chamber, his demeanor nervous and wary. Time had etched lines of weariness across his face, evidence of the burden he bore quietly since that fateful encounter. Under the glimmering light of the candles, Oedipus began the careful questioning, probing the servant to recount the details of the old king's death. Piece by piece, a narrative emerged, a tragic tale of a royal procession violently disrupted at a remote crossroads. As the servant spoke, his voice quivering between revelation and hesitation, vivid images of the past filled the room. A narrow path, a sudden argument, and a flash of violence that led to Laius's wild demise. Oedipus listened intently, his mind tracing every word, every gesture, as if trying to reach toward some elusive truth that hovered just beyond his grasp. It was a harrowing account, steeped in the haunting echoes of destiny and the unpredictable twists of fate. Oedipus pressed further, inquiring about the identities and roles of those present at the scene of the crime. The servant disclosed that those who had accompanied Laius had all met their demise, either at the crossroads or in subsequent events. His story painted a picture of confusion and fear, moments that unfurled in a pattern Oedipus found disturbingly familiar. He had shared those crossroads, engaged in a fatal confrontation on a journey. Not long past. Memories converged within Oedipus's mind, aligning with the servant's depiction, a recollection of a heated altercation, the quick rise of anger, and the unintended consequences that followed. In the fading glow of the chamber, Oedipus realized the description of the attacker matched his own appearance, the very reflection he saw each day, now twisted into the visage of an unknown assailant from his past. Within the confines of the palace, another voice blended into the tapestry of discovery. Jocasta, intertwining her narrative with the path that led to this moment, relayed the circumstances surrounding the death of her old husband. Her recounting was tinged with the sorrow of unknowing the full story, yet she offered details significant enough to cause Oedipus's heart to thunder in his chest. Her words circled around the unfortunate event, drawing a web that seemed ever more inescapable. As the stories interwove, clarity dawned upon Oedipus, chilling in its certainty. The circumstances matched too closely with his journey, the crossroads, and his own violent confrontation. He began to tremble at the realization of the terrible possibility that he was the man responsible for the death of King Laius, his flesh and blood, the fulfillment of a dreaded prophecy delivered. With whispered breaths at his own birth. Narrowed were his thoughts as Oedipus confronted the possibility that had long lurked in the shadows of his mind, yet dared not be spoken. Here, in this dim chamber, amongst the remnants of truth and the weight of spoken words, lay the dawning horror of a son, a ruler, and the killer intertwined by fate's unyielding threads. The realization settled heavily, a prelude to the revelations yet to come, like the last refrains of an overture echoing towards the inevitable tragedy. The night pressed on, but for Oedipus, the world seemed to still, hinging solely on the fearful knowledge gained. In quiet acceptance mingled with disbelief, he stood poised upon the edge of the ultimate unraveling of his identity. A man shadowed by destiny, yet unfolding into the light of an undeniable truth. In the deepening shadows of the Theban palace, the air hung heavy with uncertainty and rising realization. The court had become a place of tense reflection, with each word spoken about the past stirring ripples in the souls present. Oedipus stood resolute, determined to uncover the truth of King Laius's murder, and yet the air was thick with an ominous anticipation. Nearby, Jocasta, the queen, stood quietly amidst the hushed murmurings of those gathered. Her mind was a quiver of scattered memories, fragments of a long-buried past that were now beginning to align ominously with the events unfolding before her. As witness after witness recounted tales, each more revealing than the last, a creeping dread began to seep into her heart, a whisper of a truth too terrible to ignore. The words of the prophecy uttered so many years before replayed in Jocasta's mind like a haunting echo. She remembered seeking the oracle with Laius, the foretelling of doom resting upon their child, a dire prediction that had governed every desperate action they had taken thereafter. Her thoughts traveled to the day their infant son was taken to the mountainside to protect them from the fate the gods had seemingly ordained. Standing in silent reflection, Jocasta's gaze fell upon Oedipus, the man she had come to cherish as a husband and a noble king of Thebes. A sudden chill coursed through her as she noticed the necklace he wore, a simple piece yet engraved in her memory. It was the same necklace given to her child, an heirloom intended to someday affirm the line of succession, and it struck her like a bolt of profound, unwelcome recognition. The realization pressed upon her heart with unbearable weight. Jocasta retreated inward, away from the prying eyes of court and into the sanctuary of her private chamber. There, enveloped by the gentle glow of the moon, she cradled the object close, the touch of its cool metal a grounding but painful embrace. Shadows played across the dimly lit walls as she struggled with the haunting inevitability. There, in the solitude of her chamber, she wrestled with her grief and the unimaginable truth unraveling before her. The son she thought lost, to protect their family and kingdom, had returned. He had survived against all odds, unknowingly walked into the life woven by the very prophecy they had feared, and now stood as both her husband and the harbinger of fate. But love fought against the surge of despair in Jocasta's heart. Though she knew the truth, every instinct bid her to shield Oedipus from its soul-crushing burden. How could she stand aside and watch as it crushed the man she loved, the king who saved Thebes with his courage and wisdom? The days filled with laughter, the nights warmed by tender conversations, all slipped through her grasp like sands of time she could not clutch. In the quiet sanctuary of her thoughts, Jocasta accepted what must be, a tragic acceptance. She alone would bear the knowledge for now, choosing to burden herself with the insight she wished fervently to obscure from Oedipus. Unseen tears glimmered in her eyes, reflected moonlight serving as a silent companion to her sorrow. And so she resolved to maintain her calm facade, at least for the moment. Grief threatened to displace her resolve, but she clung to the hope that perhaps, by delaying the unveiling of this harrowing truth, she might spare Oedipus even a moment more of peace. Yet that resolution underscored the tragic shadow looming, as the inevitability of the full revelation hung over them all, an oppressive weight that would soon demand its due. Jocasta's retreat into her chamber was unnoticed by most. However, her lingering absence left an unvoiced emptiness in the palace halls. The pieces of destiny shifted, alignments completed in the cosmic web, as she embraced the role fate had crafted for her, both a mourner for her past and a bearer of the awful truth that could not be. Forever hidden. Such was the quiet acceptance that settled over her like an inevitable twilight. In her heart, she knew the hour was drawing closer when denial could no longer shield Oedipus. But for now, the chamber's solitude bore witness to her silent struggle, a brief reprieve before destiny resumed its inexorable march. The revelation, daunting and heart-rending, was yet one step in their shared journey, a path woven intricately by forces beyond mortal power. The sky over Thebes was a heavy canvas of ashen gray, as if nature itself understood the gravity of the discoveries unfolding beneath its watch. Upon the rocky outskirts of the city, Oedipus continued his relentless pursuit of the truth. The moments ticked by, each one weighted with the potential to redefine his understanding of himself, his past, and the city that he had grown to love as his own. He approached the shepherd, an old man who had played an unwitting role in the winding paths of fate that now converged on this singular moment in time. As the shepherd stood before him, Oedipus noticed the wear of years etched into every line on the man's face. Though time had taken its toll, the shepherd's eyes still held a spark of life, a testament to the compassion that had once driven his actions. With patience and a careful choice of words, Oedipus began to unravel the enigmatic tapestry of his origin. He inquired of the shepherd, tipping the scales of memory back to a day long past when an innocent decision had set irrevocable events into motion. The shepherd hesitated under the weight of his recollections, his reluctance a silent testament to the burden of secrets kept for too long. He spoke haltingly of a newborn swaddled in cloth, entrusted to him by the order of King Laius. In those days, the child's cries had mingled with the gentle sigh of winds that whispered across the mountainside, insistent that hope should echo even in moments of despair. The shepherd's voice trembled as he recounted his decision to defy fate, choosing compassion over command by ensuring the baby's survival and passing him into the care of another. Oedipus listened, each revelation a blow that landed with growing intensity upon his heart and mind. It was as if the universe itself had conspired to veil his origins, yet now unraveled them with deliberate inevitability. Details emerged. The infant left to fate's whim was none other than Oedipus, spared by the shepherd from a cruel demise upon the wild slopes of Mount Cithaeron. As these truths surfaced, the certainty he had known unraveled, exposing a stark new reality beneath. The narrative continued its somber journey, confirming Oedipus's darkest suspicions. Each piece fits seamlessly into the puzzle, painting a portrait of prophecy fulfilled. The man who had unknowingly slain his father on a deserted crossroads was indeed Laius's own progeny. Shudders of realization coursed through Oedipus as he came to terms with his dual role as both child and avenger. He had crossed paths with his father unawares, sealing the fate that the oracle had foretold. The atmosphere became one of sober revelation, a deep silence following the shepherd's words as they settled over Oedipus like a shroud. As the weight of the discovery sank in, Oedipus faced the undeniable truth. He was both son and husband to Jocasta. Every pulse of time seemed to stretch, drawn tight with the terrible enormity of his actions. He had thought to outpace destiny, to carve his own path, but found instead that each step had been one further into the heart of the prophecy. As he stood amongst rocks and shadows, the world shifted under Oedipus's feet. Discipline urged him to understand the tragic role he played in a cruel twist of fate, but emotion wrestled for an understanding of its own. He was confronted with the full consequence of human action, intertwined inexorably with divine will. Where human perception had faltered, destiny had forged ahead, playing out its narrative with unerring precision. And so, with each beat of his heart echoing like a tolling bell, Oedipus bore the weight of his tragic tale, penned by gods yet enacted by man. The chorus, witnesses to the unfoldment of fate, reflected upon the paradox that embraced divine prophecy against the desperate will of human endeavor. In these moments of quiet revelation, Thebes and its king lay suspended between the echo of past actions and the ripples they now sent across the tides of destiny. As realization crested over him, a calmed acceptance loomed amidst the upheaval. No longer could he deny the truth of his identity, a truth his soul had pursued despite, or perhaps because of, every warning. The full burden of awareness was his to bear alone, and with it came an awareness of the journey yet to unfold. The leaden sky remained a constant, quietly enveloping the figure of Oedipus beneath its unyielding gray. He knew that the next steps would be shaped by the revelations of this day, their shadow stretching long over the structures of his life and heart. With resolve, he steeled himself for what was to come, ready to carry out the role fate had inexorably written for him from the very start. With the heavy truth revealed, Oedipus made his way back into the heart of Thebes, the weight of his discovery pressing heavily upon his soul. The skies above seemed to echo his somber mood, with clouds gathering in a slow, even march across the heavens. A light rain began to fall, washing the streets where jubilant celebrations had once been held in his honor. But now, the atmosphere was muted, befitting the tragedy that was unfolding. Jocasta, having retreated to the privacy of her chambers, faced a tempest within her own heart. She had tried to deny the whispers of recognition that had grown louder with each uncovered truth, but they had now burst into an undeniable reality. Her mind echoed with the prophecy she had once dismissed, a prophecy that had wound through the years to ensnare her in its inescapable embrace. Overcome with despair, she now stood alone, grappling with the horror of her unintended union with her own son. The moments dripped slowly in her silent chamber, punctuated by internal screams of anguish and regret. Fleeing from the unbearable weight of inevitability, Jocasta sought escape from the pain that clawed at every corner of her being. In a final act of despair and love, she chose to exit the stage of this sorrowful tragedy, seeking peace beyond the confines of her earthly turmoil. Her departure was a quiet reverberation through the palace, unseen but deeply felt. Oedipus eventually found her lifeless form, and there before him lay the physical manifestation of the tragic culmination of their shared fate. In that moment, grief crashed upon him with a force that no triumph over mythical beasts could shield him from. Here was a tragedy born not of volition, but of the strings of destiny, tightly wound and unrelenting in their cruel design. As he bowed before this scene of ultimate grief, an unyielding tide of despair overcame him. In a heart-wrenching gesture of atonement and regret, Oedipus took it upon himself to dispense a self-imposed punishment. His own hands rendered blindness upon himself, a mirror to the metaphorical blindness that had led him unwittingly down this path. In this profound act he sought understanding and penance. The city of Thebes, which had once heralded Oedipus as a savior, now watched with sorrow and compassion as the great king descended into his own darkness. The tragedy, marked by an air of inevitability, resonated deeply within its walls. These somber events evoked a universal reflection on the capricious nature of fate and human endeavor. The people of Thebes, their hearts heavy with shared loss, recognized the tragedy not simply as the fall of their king, but as an enduring testament to the power of destiny. Emerging from the haze of his own emotional storm, Oedipus gathered the remnants of his resolve to face his subjects. There, upon the city's pallid streets, he acknowledged the full weight of his transgressions, his form a shadow of the king he once was. With humility, he sought cleansing through exile, a departure he deemed just and necessary for the sins unwittingly committed against the family and city he loved. Before his people, Oedipus stood, not as the king who had vanquished the Sphinx, but as a man who had walked a path laid before him by an inescapable fate. A fate that, despite his bravest efforts, had come to pass. His acceptance of this truth, however grievous, evoked a kind of quiet dignity. As dusk veiled Thebes in soft grays and dusky roses, the once proud monarch prepared to leave the city he had both saved and unknowingly brought low. With his own eyes clouded by self-inflicted darkness, he entrusted the care of Thebes to the steady hands of Creon. The guiding light once sought from beyond now became a journey within, a search for meaning and peace in the acceptance of fate's gentle embrace. The crossroads of the past now lay behind him. What remained was the unwavering path forward, one upon which he would tread humbly, aware of life's fragile balance between choice and the inevitable. Designs of destiny. This somber dedication to his own fate set the stage for a transformative journey, a journey that would continue as Oedipus relinquished his role as king and embraced his future with resigned acceptance. With the weight of his tragic history now clear, Oedipus stood at the gates of Thebes as dawn began to break. The misty air embraced him gently, a fitting backdrop for the journey he was about to undertake. This was not just a physical departure, but a profound transition into self-acceptance and understanding of his complex fate. Quietly dignified, Oedipus prepared for the exile he had chosen, to atone for his unwitting transgressions. As the morning light touched the path before him, Oedipus, once the mighty king, was now a solitary figure shrouded in humility. His garments were simple and travel-worn, his eyes bandaged, leaving him to rely on the tap of his walking staff. Each step was deliberate, not merely away from Thebes, but towards a deeper understanding of destiny's intricate web he had been caught in since birth. Reflecting on his journey thus far, Oedipus pondered the enigmatic nature of fate. In seeking to outrun the prophecy that shadowed his life, he inadvertently fulfilled it. Yet he realized, this realization brought a new kind of clarity. Though blinded physically, his inner sight deepened, allowing him to see the truth with a weighty but calm resolve. Acceptance wrapped around him as he understood that every turn in the road had been part of a grand design, inescapable yet profoundly human. Creon, now the caretaker of Thebes, approached with a somber respect. He had watched his sister's husband and king descend into tragedy, but he knew that compassion was the path forward. Gently, he assisted Oedipus in the final preparations for his departure, ensuring his journey could be faced with as much comfort as possible under such grievous circumstances. This act of kindness provided a moment of solace, a bridge of understanding between the ruler and the man who had once been the savior of Thebes. The people of Thebes, their hearts heavy with the sorrow of recent events, gathered in quiet clusters to witness Oedipus's reluctant farewell. Their faces bore the marks of grief and sympathy, recognizing in him a figure shaped by forces beyond his control, and yet still a man to be honored for striving to protect them, even from himself. Hushed whispers filled the air, carrying wishes for peace and redemption as Oedipus stepped onto the path laid before him. With each footfall, Oedipus moved toward the uncertain future. His journey was not merely a banishment, but a testament to the resilience of the human spirit confronted with the inevitable. Though leaving familiar surroundings, he felt a stirring certainty that acceptance was its own kind of victory. There was a newfound freedom in embracing what could not change and finding strength in vulnerability. In his blindness, Oedipus perceived the world in a novel clarity. Colors lost their hue but gained a significance that transcended sight. Every sound, every shift in the gentle breeze became part of a new reality where introspection replaced turmoil. Each moment was both a step away and a step towards something greater, an exploration of identity free from the physical bounds of sight and form. The dawn stretched its gentle fingers across the horizon, a nod to new beginnings. Oedipus, enveloped in the soft silver mist, disappeared into its embrace, leaving behind both the triumph and tragedy of his reign. The path ahead was obscured, yet in that obscurity lay a profound sense of peace. His journey became a passage not only through the landscape but within himself, a story of fate folding into resolution. As he ventured forth, questions of destiny, identity, and acceptance lingered in the air. They were reminders of the interconnectedness of human lives and the mysteries that govern them. Oedipus's story would echo in the annals of Thebes and beyond, a timeless parable of triumph, suffering, and the gentle release found in accepting one's place within the tapestry of fate. Thus, on this serene morning, Oedipus embarked on the final leg of his journey, not as a defeated king, but as a man who embraced the totality of his existence and walked forward with courage and quiet grace.